Hey everybody, this is Kit with Kit's Cars. Well, I had this awesome voiceover monologue from inside the car, but I accidentally stopped recording when I thought I started it, so you're going to get some not super exciting driving footage with my voiceover. It's mostly shot with the windows up, so you don't even get a ton of the V12 opera music, so sorry about that. Anyhow, I got an offer that I couldn't refuse to sell the 718 Spyder, so I did. While it hasn't been officially announced yet, I can't help but wonder if there's a Spyder RS on the way, and if there is, I want one. An open top car combined with a real GT3 motor would be a force to be reckoned with. The existing Spyder motor is great, but owning it after owning a GT3 made me realize that, yeah, I did indeed miss the additional power and 1,000 RPM on the tach. And if you can get a Spyder RS with a manual, well, that'd be the ultimate road car in a lot of ways. But let's get back today. Obviously, the car I'm in right now is not a Spyder RS or a Spyder or a Porsche at all. When I went looking for cars, I decided that after a stint in Porsche GT cars, it was time to get into something that was a bit more like a traditional GT car, fast, comfortable, and stylish without being too outlandish. I unfortunately don't fit well in the mid-engine Ferraris or Lamborghinis, but I decided I wanted a V12 touring car, something that was fun on a twisty road, but whose primary mission wasn't those twisties. I narrowed to the V12 Aston Martins, either a last-gen V12 Vantage or Vanquish or current-gen DBS, or the Ferrari FF or GTC for Lusso, or an F12. I drove a DBS at Car Week, and while I really liked the car, it was bigger and heavier and less agile than I wanted, and the turbo motor, well, while it provided a good amount of motivation, it just has nowhere near the personality or smoothness of power delivery as the Ferraris. I really fell in love with the way the Ferrari V12s not only sound, but the way they deliver power. It's a smooth, creamy rush towards the red line, of which you can dole out exactly how much you want, with a very linear and responsive gas pedal. You feel like the power plant's full of reserve, no matter what you're doing, but it also instantly delivers power when you need it. And, well, so it's, the V12 Lusso is a great car. I looked at the V8 Lusso being rear-wheel drive, and in many ways it's a really good car, but it just wasn't as unique or compelling as the V12 cars. It's lighter, turns in a little bit better, and it's plenty fast with that turbo V8, but I owned a California T with that same motor, and I've driven a Portofino M, and it just doesn't do it for me like the V12s do. You don't get the linear power delivery, and you get the feeling they turn the mid-range boost down in the first few gears, and it turns out they actually did. So it really boiled down to either a GTC4 Lusso or an F12, both with the V12 motor. So Lusso prices have gone up quite a bit, a lot. F12 prices are up too, just like the entire used car market, but more like 5%, 5 maybe 10%, whereas the V12 Lussos, man, they were well under 200,000, and they're a lot more now. The F12s are up too, but more like 5 or 10%, not 20%. Lusso certainly has some nice things like more headroom, more room for passengers, a more modern interior, and better in-car entertainment. It's noticeably less powerful, and it's a lot less scary and less emotional to me. The F12 is a really emotional car. Part of that emotion is terror. I mean, people realize that with 731 horsepower and rear-wheel drive, it's very easy to break the rear end loose if you're not careful, and you can do so up through third gear on cold tires, even in the dry. But if you aren't a total idiot with the throttle, it's a very satisfying car to drive. But yeah, I remember test driving an F12 about 5 years ago. I got on the highway, banged out a couple of shifts, or maybe 3 or 4, and realized I was going over 150 miles an hour on 101 South. Oops. I knew that if I was going to own this car, I was going to have to be a bit more mature with my throttle foot. I finally found the spec I was looking for at Ferrari of San Francisco. I probably overpaid a bit for the car. It is fairly lightly optioned. It's got no JBL stereo, no carbon buckets, no passenger display, not all that much carbon fiber, and no axle lift. But it does have the carbon wheel with the shift lights and the correct red on tan color combo for me. And the interior is the way I wanted it, with the beige leather with the black dash. And it had the optional forged wheels, which I really like. Pulled the trigger on the car about a month ago. My first impressions. Let's see, Ferrari really knows how to do interiors. Just sitting in the car is an occasion. It smells like fine leather, even being 6 years old, and it's beautifully assembled for the most part. The controls are fairly logically laid out, except for the stereo controls, which are pretty hard to decipher. And without the passenger side display from the passenger seat, there's almost nothing to look at except for the climate controls, which is kind of weird. Ergonomically, the car fits pretty well, except for a couple of minor complaints. The steering wheel controls for everything, like all modern Ferraris, gets a little confusing. You're definitely going to leave your blinkers on for an extended period of time. And a lot of people get in the car and put it in reverse, and then it's kind of hard to get it into drive forward. What you have to do is click one of the paddles, which seems super obvious at first, but most cars, there's a dedicated button to start driving forward. I still could use a little bit more headroom. Likely should have gotten the carbon buckets, but the electronically adjusted Daytona seats are fairly comfortable. And look, the headroom stuff is likely a problem unique to my proportions, a bit over 6 feet tall with a long torso and a bad back. I think the F12 is a stunningly good-looking car from the front and side profile. It's a huge step forward from the 599 GTB, although I certainly like the flying buttresses from the 599 as well. The rear end of the F12 is a bit more controversial. It looks like fallopian tubes, and it's kind of odd looking, but it looks better in person than it does in pictures to me. It's not as strikingly different as mid-engine cars. It doesn't stand out quite as much, but I still think it's a beautiful car, although it has been mistaken for a Subaru BRZ a few times. Performance-wise, I can't write enough good things about the engine, except for the abysmal gas mileage. You're lucky to get 200 miles out of a 20-gallon tank, and with most gas pumps shutting you off at $100, I've had to use a different credit card to actually fill up the tank a few times, so that's no fun. But the power is incredible, and it's addictive. The throttle is extremely linear, and you feel like you're in total control of the power, except when you're at cruise. One of the things that I've noticed about the car is that if you're driving at 72, it's really easy to look down and realize you're going 95. But that's what they made cruise control for. There's just not quite enough travel at the beginning of the throttle to easily modulate and maintain a steady state speed. But that's not a huge issue to me, because when you're actually driving on a twisty road, there's a ton of linearity on the throttle. It's very easy to meter out exactly how much power you need. So, like I said before, as long as you're not an idiot with the throttle, it's really a neutral handling car. The drivability of the V12 is really what you miss out of turbo cars. As much as the manufacturers try to tune that out, you just don't get the linearity of power delivery that you get out of a naturally aspirated car, which means it's much harder to give, say, like 30% power to 40% power. In a turbo car, you're getting 20% power or 80% power, and very little in between. It's way too easy to get a modern turbo car to spin the wheels coming out of a corner. It's harder to meter the power, and I just find that these naturally aspirated motors are just so much more fun to drive, even if they might be a little slower. The F12 meters out power so linearly is that the only way you can get in trouble if you just indiscriminately mat the throttle, which people do, and sure, it'll certainly bite you if it does that. Like I said earlier, the 315 rear tires are decently easily overwhelmed by the power in first gear, second gear, and even third gear if the tires are cold. But you have to be pointed in the direction of travel or be ready to countersteer, which, if you decide to, the car is very, very easy to slide around and to catch. The power is so beautiful, the motor sounds incredible, and it just always wants to be in the higher RPMs, which, like I said earlier, can be certainly dangerous to your driver's license if you aren't careful. The brakes are similarly incredible. They can be a bit grabby at normal speeds, but when you're going fast, they're very linear with a huge reserve of stopping power. You always feel like the car is going to stop no matter what you're doing. And ceramic brakes are standard like all modern Ferraris, and I kind of shudder to think of the replacement cost, but likely to last most of the life of the car at least. Around town, you do have to have a subtle touch, like I mentioned, or they will fling your head forward when you come to a stop. Handling is likely the most controversial part of the car, but I don't even think it's that controversial. I mean, the car handles great for as heavy of a car as it is. It's not a Miata, it's not a Boxster, it's not even a 458. I also don't believe in the car magazines talking about big cars shrinking around you. Yeah, I mean, a big car is a big car. They don't shrink. There are better and worse big cars, but this is a big car, and there's no hiding the weight. Ferrari quotes a curb weight of 3,593 pounds in U.S. trim, and it's probably 200 or 300 pounds heavier than that in reality. It's got enough power and brakes to mask that weight in a straight line, but when you go around corners, you can feel that it's a heavy car. And it transitions well because it has great shock absorbers, but I do believe that it's not a lightweight car. Ferrari makes some of the best dampers for street cars around, and the trade-off between sticking to the road and not beating up your occupants is pretty incredible. The F12 does ride a little stiffer than some of the mid-engine Ferraris, especially the F430 or the 458 Italia. I think they absorb medium-sized bumps better than the F12. Small bumps get pretty completely absorbed, but medium impacts do make it through. They don't upset the car, but certainly they do make it through a little more. Turn-in is immediate, the steering is very quick, and the car feels really good in transitions. Given its weight, I mean, it doesn't transition like a Miata, it doesn't even transition like a 718 Spyder, but it's pretty good, and it keeps itself well controlled. The chassis is very well damped. It's not lightweight, and you are moving a lot of weight around. You can really feel it in low-speed corners, although I find low-speed corners a lot of fun because of the power, because you can just adjust the angle of travel as much as you want to with that throttle. The car never understeers. If you go into a corner too hot, it will swap ends on you pretty easily. So it's definitely something to be careful of. I really don't think it deserves as much of a widowmaker kind of reputation as it has. Certainly if you're not careful with it, it will bite you. But I mean, that's true of pretty much any modern car. And the F12 is a really controllable car once you turn it in. It's just not super lightweight. It does step out aggressively if you mat the throttle, and the traction control is really good. If you want to hang the tail out, and as long as you do it in a controlled fashion, it just lets you. But if you start yawing too quickly, it will clamp down and straighten the car out. I really enjoy driving this car. It's certainly different from a lightweight sports car. I mean, my 600 LT was probably faster in a straight line, on a twisty road. It's probably not faster in a straight line. But this car's got more power. It makes better noises, and it's much more comfortable to drive. It feels more special inside. The McLaren has a very race car feeling interior, which is nice, but I really like the way Ferrari puts their interiors together. Overall, this is exactly what I wanted after the last few Porsches. It's definitely a special driving experience and something different. I really like this motor. I really think that it's the way a sports car motor should work, and I truly feel lucky to have experienced it.